Most mornings in my life looked exactly the same. I'd wake up before the sun rose, make myself a cup of Earl Grey, and sit by the kitchen window, letting the quiet fill in the gaps my family always left. The library job wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a rhythm, books to shelve, people to nod to, silence to hide in. I liked it that way. I liked not being seen too much. Being the youngest meant being overlooked. In a house where my older brother could fill a room with one opinion and my sister cried dramatically over microwave dinners, I learned early on how to stay quiet. My father never encouraged noise. He was precise, always half-absent, like he was just waiting for life to pass. A man of discipline, my mother used to say. I always thought he was hiding something. Something about the way he looked at me felt off. Like I was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. I couldn't explain it, not then. But the discomfort sat quietly, like a low hum in the walls, always there, just under everything. One Thursday evening, I got home earlier than usual. Power outage at the library. I walked into the house expecting the usual stillness, maybe the distant hum of the TV. But instead, it was Dad's voice, low, sharp, speaking in Italian. I only caught bits and pieces of the language growing up. He never taught us, never explained why he used it only for certain calls. I paused near the hallway, not trying to eavesdrop but unable to help it. She's been dead for years. That's why you owe me nothing. I stopped breathing. He said it like it was nothing. Like it was a fact. My blood went cold as I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. Was he talking about me? The moment passed quickly. He ended the call and I hurried upstairs, quiet as a ghost. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying his words again and again. Memories surfaced, like the time I wasn't allowed to go on a school trip because of family concerns. Or how my name never appeared in our family's framed pictures downstairs. I thought it was just favoritism. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe I misunderstood him. Maybe it was just a bad joke. But something deep inside me knew that wasn't true. The next morning, I waited until Dad left for his morning walk. He always took the same route, same time, like a soldier following orders only he understood. I went into his home office. The room was neat, impersonal. Drawers locked. Folders labeled by year. I started going through them. One folder caught my eye, 2014, the year I turned 17. Inside were documents I didn't recognize, bank statements, flight bookings to places I'd never been. And a photo of me. Only the name on the back wasn't mine. Julia. In handwriting I'd never seen before. Another folder was missing. It had my birth year on it. I closed the drawer, my heart pounding so loud I thought the neighbors could hear it. I wasn't losing my mind. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. That afternoon, I walked down the street to visit Hannah, my childhood friend. We used to spend summers building forts in her backyard. I hadn't seen her in years, but I needed a face from my past to ground me. She opened the door, eyes wide. Oh my God. I thought you moved away years ago after. She stopped. Her face went pale. I'm sorry. I just remembered I have a call. Rain check? She closed the door before I could ask, after what? I walked back home, the words echoing in my head. I've been erased somehow. Dinner was quiet that night. My dad sat across from me, eating his food like nothing had changed. I watched him carefully. Noticed how calm he was. Too calm. Did you tell someone I died? I asked. Just like that. He didn't flinch. He swallowed his bite, dabbed his mouth with a napkin. Some people just can't handle certain truths, he said, like it was a quote he rehearsed. No denial. No shock. Just that smile, small, empty. In that moment, I saw him clearly. Not as my father. As a man capable of burying his daughter without digging a grave. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded. If he was lying to them, he was lying to me too. And I wasn't going to wait for the truth to come to me anymore. I would find it, piece by piece, even if it tore everything apart. The text came through just after lunch. Fiona. I hadn't heard from her in over a year, maybe more. It wasn't a "how are you?" or "been thinking about you." Just a bright, almost chirpy message, "family dinner tonight. 6:30, you should come." I stared at it for a while. Too chipper. Too sudden. Fiona didn't do warmth without reason. The last time we spoke, she called me a drama magnet. Now she was sending invitations like nothing had happened. Why now? Why tonight? I should have said no. But there was something, maybe curiosity, maybe stubbornness, that made me say yes. I told myself I'd go, stay an hour, and leave. Maybe I'd catch a glimpse of what was really going on behind all the silence. I wore dark jeans and a sweater that didn't try too hard. Neutral, polite. I brushed my hair, wiped down my shoes. Not for them, just so they couldn't say I looked like I was begging for something. The house hadn't changed. Same chipped walkway, same overgrown rose bushes. The front door still stuck if you didn't lift it a little as you turned the knob. Inside, everything looked smaller. Not physically. Just drained somehow. Faded curtains. A smell I couldn't place, something stale, like time had stopped moving here. My mother greeted me with a thin smile. Fiona hugged me like a stranger. Even my brother David gave me a nod without really meeting my eyes. No one asked where I'd been. No one asked about my work, my life, my health. It was as if I had never existed in any timeline they recognized. We sat around the table like nothing was out of place. Lasagna, wine, candlelight, an almost Norman Rockwell setting if you squinted hard enough. Except for the silence. The tightness in the air. The way Dad chuckled too loud at nothing at all. They acted like I was just background noise. And then Uncle Lorenzo raised his glass. To those who've left us, he slurred, already 2 glasses in. Especially little Zareth. She would have turned 30 this year. Clink. Silence. More clinks. More silence. I stopped chewing. My fork froze midair. My name, spoken like a ghost story. No one corrected him. Not even a blink from Fiona. Not even a twitch from Dad. They just let the lie hang there, like cheap smoke after a bad firework. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a dinner to bring me back. It was a script. A performance. I was the backdrop for a eulogy I didn't know had been written. They declared me dead. Not in argument. Not in anger. Just. Socially. Officially. Neatly. I put my napkin down. Gently. Deliberately. I walked out through the sliding glass door into the backyard. The air was cooler than I remembered. I stood where the old sandbox used to be, where Fiona once buried my favorite toy just to watch me cry. I used to love this yard. I could have screamed. thrown the wine glass. Demanded they explain what kind of twisted game this was. But I knew what I'd get: gaslight apologies, vague platitudes, maybe even tears. They wouldn't tell me the truth. They'd just smooth it over with guilt. I wasn't there for feelings. I needed facts. And I knew exactly where the truth was hiding. Later that night, after everyone went to bed, or at least pretended to, I slipped down to the basement. The steps creaked the same way they always had. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from clarity. I moved quietly past the water heater and the old sofa no one ever used. Toward Dad's filing cabinets. One drawer, locked. I tried the old spare key I'd kept in a shoebox for years. It still worked. Inside, a stack of manila folders. One marked 1992 caught my eye. My birth year. I opened it and stopped breathing. A death certificate. For Zareth Elaine Conti. My name. My birthday. Notarized. Filed. Stamped. Filed as deceased in 2014. The same year everything started to feel different. It was fake. But it looked real enough to fool a courthouse. They buried me on paper. Beneath it, something else. A letter, yellowed with time, sealed but never sent. Addressed to Emilio D'Angelo. The name sparked something in my chest: Dad's phone call. The one in Italian. The phrase I hadn't forgotten. She's been dead for years. That's why you owe me nothing. The envelope read, "Deliver upon confirmation." I didn't open it. Not yet. But I knew then that this wasn't just a family secret. It was something bigger. Something that had names and dates and possibly blood on its hands. I slid the letter into my jacket pocket and climbed the stairs, knees shaking. I had come looking for truth. But what I found felt a lot more like danger. The letter hit me at breakfast, just a blank envelope with my name typed in crisp black letters. I almost tossed it aside. But I remembered the phrase from the basement drawer, Emilio D'Angelo. I pulled out my laptop, searched public records, sifted through old construction contracts, and found him. The name came up in Newark, tied to a shell company and a corruption case 10 years old. My father's voice echoed in my mind: curiosity can turn into a death wish. So I held my coffee, waited for calm, and made the call. No police, no fanfare. I needed to walk into this. On purpose. That afternoon I packed lightly: a notebook, spare key, phone, charger. The city felt colder than I remembered. Rain pounded the pavement, matching the tremor in my chest. I took the train into Newark's Italian Quarter, past shuttered deli shutters and small cafes still loyal to old ways. At the cafe I entered, the sign flickered. Inside, a man stood. Silver hair, sharp suit, eyes that held recognition before I could speak. He said, "Ms. Hollis." I nodded. "Emilio D'Angelo," he said. I sat. He looked old but his voice was steady. He offered me a sealed brown envelope. "Your father asked me to give this to you, only if you ever came back alive." When I opened it, bank statements under my name and one of those shell companies slid free. My body froze. He watched me. He wasn't just your father to me. He was my debt. I felt rage so quiet it roared. "You don't bury me twice," I said. He nodded and left a handwritten note, coordinates, a date. I slipped the envelope into my jacket. Rain was heavier now. On the walk home I noticed a black sedan trailing. I changed direction, the car slowed. I didn't panic. I smiled. I welcomed it. I knew then the war had begun. I returned to the estate after dark, the driveway lights already off. The air smelled of polished oak and something old, memories of money and glass chandeliers I'd ignored for years. The garage door thudded behind me and I stood in the hush. It felt wrong to be back. Safe shouldn't feel like this. I headed to the corridor that led toward the chapel. The carpet was familiar beneath my feet yet foreign at the same time. I used to race down it as a kid, laughing, hoping for some sign of attention. Tonight, the hush seemed to mock me. I remembered my mother whispering, "Forever should feel safe." It didn't. Not anymore. I took a deep breath. If the past didn't shield me, no illusion ever would. I wasn't here to belong. I was here to expose. In the chapel, the candlelight flickered. I noticed immediately that the pews weren't uniform, they were branded. Crests reading Hollis Industries carved into the wood. At the front where a cross had always been, a polished metal logo gleamed. I froze for a beat or two too long. What used to be my sanctuary felt like a corporate ceremony. The altar wasn't about faith, it was a display of power. This house, my house, had moved God aside to celebrate money and control. They didn't just erase me, they rewrote our sacred space, I thought. My pulse was too loud. I realized betrayal didn't always shout, sometimes it rearranges the symbols you held dear. After that, I went down to the basement, records room. The files lined the walls in neat rows, a scanner humming softly like a heartbeat that refused to stop. My key opened a locked drawer marked Hollis Deaths 2022 to 2025. I pulled it open and there it was, a framed certificate. Zareth Elaine Conti. My name. My birthday. Date of death, 2015. The typeface official. Not a typo. They had declared me gone, when I was very much alive. For a moment I felt no fear. I felt fire. They thought death would silence me, what they couldn't kill, I will rewrite, I said silently. The facts circled around me like vultures. Betrayal forged into a blade. Beside the certificate was a red wax envelope stamped with D'Angelo Finance. The seal unbroken, the wax still deep crimson. I hesitated. I touched it and a memory hit, the letter from Emilio D'Angelo, the man Dad spoke to in Italian. My stomach nodded. Inside the envelope I found lists, offshore accounts, code names, and a typed note, she resurfaces, liquidate asset under Zareth Hollis. My breath slowed. This was beyond family deceit. This was criminal. I looked up at the filing room's stark ceiling and felt the shift. This house had secrets darker than I'd imagined. Stepping outside, the air was colder. Rain tapped the windows like a reminder. I checked my phone and snapped photos of the files I held. I whispered, I will not be erased again. I didn't have to face them yet. I just had to prepare. They may sense I'm back, but they haven't seen me fight. My resolve was quiet but solid. Walking toward the gate, headlights bounced off the raindrops. A black sedan rolled past slowly. My pulse spiked, not in fear. I raised my chin. Someone recognized me. Someone was watching. I pressed the death certificate photo against my chest. They thought I was gone. Now they should know I'm here. And I'm a storm they can't ignore. I woke early, though the sun hadn't yet touched the sky. The nightmare, once again, was there, our old chapel, the pews empty, my name carved into a tombstone where I should have been buried. My chest tightened. I stared at the folders I'd dragged back to the apartment, filing them on the floor around me like breadcrumbs. They should have told a story. Instead, They felt like letters I hadn't answered. I closed my eyes and I thought surviving was hard. It turns out staying silent was harder. Memories came, the therapist's office, pastel walls, my voice breaking as I tried to tell someone I felt invisible. I believed I was being heard. I wasn't. I sat, unmoving for a long moment. My legs ached. The papers blurred. I realized the real weight wasn't in what I discovered. It was in how long I'd let it sit unsaid. I pushed myself up. I needed to move. Not because I felt strong, but because I couldn't afford to feel broken anymore. The next day I drove out to the storage unit, etched numbers on the door, the kind that feel like you're reopening a case file. I pushed the cart inside and scanned boxes I hadn't touched in years. Old journals, appointment cards, plastic tubs with holiday decorations. I rifled through them and found a yellowing letter, not addressed to me, but to my father. My therapist had written it, managing Zaratha's reactive behavior. My throat closed. My own story, turned into a file folder. My deepest fears treated like property. The betrayal came not with screams but with the quiet realization that I had been outsourced, my pain sold as an asset. I felt the tears welling, but instead of falling, they hardened into resolve. He didn't just silence me, he outsourced it. I looked at the therapy bills, the appointment logs, the letter dated months after I moved out. I saw how carefully the pieces were placed. I recognized the pattern of someone who built a wall around me, labeled it protection, and sold the key. I left the unit with more pieces than answers, and a hunger to make use of them. Later that night I found the old flip phone tucked behind a tub of holiday lights. I tested it out of habit, it buzzed, a single voicemail from 6 years ago. I inhaled sharply. The message was from my mother, "If you're hearing this, Zarath, please don't trust your father. Don't sign anything. I'll explain soon. Stay safe." The recording ended with the beep. My mother died 3 weeks later. My world tilted. The house I believed was mine had lied about her. I sat on the couch, listening to her voice crack, her plea thin and urgent. I realized I hadn't just been erased. I had been written out while I slept. My mind raced. I thought of the files I held, the letter I burned in the sink, the cup of tea I never shared with someone who cared. It wasn't just my life they hid, it was her warning. And I didn't want to hide anymore. In the quiet hours I traced the call log. The burner phone my mother used was registered under a false name. That fact turned into a crack I followed deeper. The documents I held, the ledger of names, the flight records, they all pointed to her final days. I tasted both sorrow and anger. She tried to protect me, and I let her fall alone. I shouldn't have carried guilt, but I did. I collected her letters, my therapy files, the phone with her voice. I thought, maybe she never gave up on me. Maybe now I shouldn't give up on her. The maps I made were crude, sticky notes on my apartment wall, red string connecting names, dates, and places. The truth wasn't comfortable. But I had learned, uncomfortable truth beats comfortable lie. That night I gathered everything in one place. I read the therapist's letter aloud, in the kitchen, light low, then burned it in the sink. Flames flickered. I watched the paper curl and blacken. Symbolic? Yes. Necessary? Even more. I printed the offshore files, the envelopes, the accounts, and labeled the binder Truth Not Trauma. I backed up everything digitally, uploaded to secure drives, kept one copy in the glove compartment of my car. I thought of the quote, "They created this map of lies. I'm going to redraw it in ink and blood. Not because I wanted vengeance. Because I deserved clarity." I realized I wasn't carrying rage. I was carrying evidence, and evidence steels you, steadies you. Around midnight I sat in my bedroom, laptop open. An encrypted email pinged. Subject line, "You're not alone." I hesitated, then clicked. The file, audio. I pressed play. My mother's voice again, but different, confident, firm, from before the fear took hold. "If you're ready, the next name you need is," and it ended. I sat in silence, the laptop's glow illuminating the worry in my eyes. I closed the file and stood. The world outside was quiet. My truth was louder. I would answer the next name. Not because I was brave. Because I had nothing left to lose. I isolated the audio file late that afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with the recorder humming softly. I clicked play, expecting a warning or a remorseful voice. Instead I heard a familiar echo, my father's law office in the background, an espresso machine, low chatter, jazz playing in the distance. I shivered. The voice was my mother's, calm but firm, the ledger the man with the ring, then a pause, then something muffled. I swallowed. This wasn't just a hidden message. It was evidence. My heart beat faster. For years I felt safe thinking what I didn't know couldn't hurt me. But here it was. I leaned forward. I pressed the pause button and looked around the empty kitchen. I'm not safe. But I'm awake now. Later that day, I drove into Newark. The law firm I once interned at. The building felt hollow, lights off, dust in the corners, like someone moved out years ago. I still had the keycard my father issued me when I was 21. It worked. I walked in and felt the weight of quiet. In his office I noticed the picture missing from his desk, no photo of my mother, not even the one of me and him. The blinds were drawn. I found a locked drawer and pulled the hidden key, a small brass thing taped behind a frame. Inside the folder marked Client, Moretti, I found a flash drive wrapped in a yellow sticky note. "If you found this, you already know too much." My pulse raced. My brain clicked, this is the door, and I've just opened it. As I locked the office door behind me, rain swept across the lot. A man approached from the shadows, leather jacket, early 50s, accent unmistakably Italian. He didn't hesitate. "Miss Hollis," he said, voice low. I froze. He said, "Your mother didn't die. Not the way they told you." My breath caught. He claimed he worked for Moretti. She was supposed to disappear, not die. But your father changed the plan. My chest tightened. A black car turned the corner and he slipped away into the shadows. I stood under the streetlight, rain soaking my coat. My mind reeled. If she didn't die, then what did? And what did that make my father? Back at my apartment I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Documents, coded messages, bank accounts under fake names. One file labeled Inheritance Directive, signed by my mother, date stamped after the day she supposedly passed. I whispered, she was alive when they declared her gone. I laid the printouts on the table, names I recognized, dates I didn't, amounts I couldn't understand. But what I did understand was this: I had been lied to. He had built his empire on her disappearance, and my silence. I sat in the darkness, burning anger mingling with sorrow. Near midnight, phone on silent, I heard the ringtone. Blocked number. I answered. A deep voice: "You're walking into something you don't understand. Stop digging." I hung up, but a voicemail followed. The same jazz I heard in the recording. Then, "If you're ready, the next name you need is," and the line cut. I pressed replay. In the background the grandfather clock ticked. I knew that clock. It sits in Dad's study. That meant the tape, the voicemail, they came from the same place. My hands didn't tremble. I inhaled slowly. My resolve crystallized. I'm not just uncovering. I'm advancing. I backed up everything: flash drive, audio file, documents. I created an envelope titled, "If Something Happens to Me." I messaged Maya, a journalist friend, only 2 words: I may call. I opened my mother's voicemail again, her voice steady this time, protective, hopeful. I whispered into the dark, "You tried to protect me, Mom. Now it's my turn." I stood by the window and watched headlights pass. Rain sliding down the glass. I clenched the flash drive in my hand like a weapon. And then the email popped into my inbox. Subject line read, "We've been expecting you, Zareth." My pulse didn't quicken. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I walked into the ballroom under the chandeliers, carrying nothing but my own presence and the evidence hidden in my jacket. The air was thick with noise, glasses clinking, laughter floating low, lights turning each crystal drop into fire. For years I felt invisible. Tonight, I would be seen. I saw my father standing to one side, sharp suit, his smile too clean. My brother Creed leaned against the rail, phone in hand, his eyes flicking mine and away. Maybe glided by with champagne, greeting guests as though she owned the room. I took a breath and reminded myself, tonight I will stand in their light, and they will see me alive. My fingers tightened around the flash drive in my jacket. My heart pounded like the band behind me, building tempo. I walked forward into the storm I helped start. The gala began. Speeches. Applause that sounded rehearsed. My father's voice, smooth and practiced, thanking donors for supporting the Hollis Foundation. My mind snapped when Lucian rose to the podium and mentioned our late sister in the memorial tribute. I froze. That was me. They were talking about me as though I were gone. I sat in the back, past rows of familiar faces and polite nods. I clutched the drive in my hand like a loaded weapon. The room felt electric. People here sensed something was off but dared not speak. I reminded myself, I didn't come for comfort. I came for truth. My blood heated at the words I didn't utter but felt. They'd erased me. They'd honored an absence that should have been a presence. And now, I'd show them I existed. Midway through the toasts, Lorna stepped forward. Quietly. Confidently. I watched as she took the stage, the room's momentum faltering for a second. I worked for this family since I was 6, she began. What you call tradition is betrayal. A hush fell. She pressed a USB into my hand and nodded toward the screen behind me. Creed's smile cracked. Lucian's face lost color. The pivot I sensed came alive. People leaned in. I didn't speak. I just stood. The evidence changed the air. I recognized in that moment, they didn't get to dismiss me anymore. I'd made myself undeniable. My inner voice, they cannot ignore us anymore. The surge of vindication made me steady. Calm. Collected. I stepped to the AV podium and plugged in the USB. The screen flickered and loaded, legal documents, recordings, bank transactions. The crest of Hollis Industries vanished from the banner and a new phrase appeared, files exposed. Cameras flashed. Guests gasped. Security shifted. Lucian tried to speak but his voice caught. Orville's cane tapped in nervous rhythm. I stood under the lights of their foundation, under the sound of their own revelations. I imagined shadows fleeing. Because when you shine light on darkness, shadows run. I swallowed hard, and the room changed around me. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a collapse of illusions. As the crowd dispersed and security moved in, I stayed. I watched Lucian being escorted from the room, his shoulders hunched. My father retreated beside Creed. I raised my voice, "You built your empire on my erasure, but tonight I reclaim it." Quiet at first, and then louder. Some eyes filled with tears, others hardened in anger, a few simply stared. I didn't chase them. This moment was mine. I felt something inside soften, relief? Maybe. I wasn't healed yet, but the cage snapped open. Pacing slowed. Emotions shifted. I realized the pain of the past had shaped me, but it wouldn't define me anymore. Outside, rain drizzled over the driveway. I walked beneath the glow of the manor lights, not speeding, just steady. My phone buzzed. A text appeared, "You opened Pandora's box. Now prepare the world to see what you started." I stopped under the marquee lights and looked back at the manor, slick with rain, still glowing, still proud, but changed. My voice in my head, they thought I was dead. They woke something alive. The night felt wide open. I didn't run. I walked. The courthouse rose in front of me like a monument to everything I had endured. Its white columns gleamed in the late morning light, and the cold air carried that strange mix of dust and tension only found in old buildings where truth is forced into daylight. I adjusted my black suit jacket, straightened my shoulders, and stepped through the heavy doors. Each footstep echoed against marble floors, followed by the faint hum of reporters whispering names, mine among them. My lawyer met me halfway down the hall, his face composed but tight. "Everything's ready," he said, sliding a folder toward me. Inside were the files I had gathered, the receipts of betrayal. I didn't need to open them. I had memorized every word, every signature, every lie. As I walked into the courtroom, my eyes found them, my father, Lucian, Creed. The men who shaped my silence. They sat at the defense table with their masks of calm, but I saw the tremor in my father's hand. For the first time, he wasn't in control. The gavel struck, and the air thickened. The prosecutor began, voice sharp and sure, cutting through the quiet like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not about inheritance, it's about identity theft, corruption, and the deliberate erasure of a human being." His words struck the room like thunder. I felt every syllable. Across from me, my father's eyes darted away, fixed on some invisible point on the wall. Lucian clenched his jaw, his arrogance flickering. The prosecutor spoke of falsified death certificates, forged contracts, and offshore accounts hidden behind layers of deception. The jury leaned forward. My lawyer rose, his tone softer but steadier, asking, "Did you ever consent to being declared dead, Ms. Hollis?" My voice was even. "No," I said. But I lived every consequence of their decision. A woman in the jury box lowered her pen and stared at me. Even Creed turned slightly, his smirk slipping just enough to show discomfort. The truth was no longer a rumor. It was a fact being spoken aloud for the first time. Then came the moment that shifted everything. My lawyer asked the judge to allow a visual submission. He pressed a button, and the courtroom lights dimmed slightly as a large screen flickered to life. The footage from the Hollis Manor Gala filled the room, the live stream that had burned through the internet days earlier. There I was, standing under chandeliers, voice steady as I exposed the contract they'd forged. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. My words from that night echoed through the speakers, "What you're seeing is the truth they buried, using my silence as the grave." Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. Lucian stood abruptly, shouting about privacy violations and misrepresentation, but the judge's gavel silenced him. My father's face hardened, a man watching the empire he built crumble under his own daughter's testimony. I rose slowly, turned toward the jury, and said, "For years, they told you I was gone. But I was here, waiting for this room, this moment." The noise that followed was a wave, gasps, murmurs, disbelief, then absolute stillness. When the doors opened again, Sal Fiore entered. He looked older than I remembered, his posture bent, his face pale. He took the stand and adjusted the microphone, his voice low but clear. "I was told she was dead," he began. "And I believed it, because I believed the man who told me." He glanced toward my father. "But when I saw the ledgers, I realized what we'd done. She wasn't dead. She was erased." My father's fingers gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Lucian dropped his gaze. Sal continued, admitting that he had helped move money under false accounts, following orders he didn't question until he saw the evidence I'd uncovered. The room was silent. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to stop. I didn't feel triumph, just the weight of what truth costs. I met Sal's eyes and said softly, "Thank you for choosing truth this time." He nodded once. In that instant, power shifted. The courtroom no longer belonged to my father. It belonged to the truth. The jury didn't take long. They filed back into the room, faces pale but resolved. "Guilty," the foreman said. "On all counts." The sound of it filled every corner, final and clean. My father's head bowed. Lucian whispered something to Creed, but the words didn't reach me. The gavel came down once more, sealing their fate. When the court adjourned, I walked outside into crisp air that tasted like rain and freedom. Reporters surrounded me, cameras flashing. One shouted, "What does justice mean to you, Ms. Hollis?" I stopped long enough to answer, "It doesn't bring the past back, but it gives the future something to stand on." And that was enough. Behind me, I heard the doors slam as they led my father away. I didn't turn around. Some goodbyes don't need witnesses. By late afternoon, clouds rolled in. The rain began in soft drops against the windshield as I drove away from Newark County. The courthouse lights faded behind me. I played my mother's old voicemail, her voice steady, almost brave. "Stay safe," she had said. It used to sound like fear. Now it sounded like instruction. I looked at the road ahead and thought about what safety really meant. It wasn't the absence of danger, it was the decision to keep moving through it. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A notification lit up the screen, a live security feed from Hollis Industries headquarters. The boardroom lights were flickering off, one by one. Something was changing. Something irreversible. "They thought death would silence me," I whispered, watching the city blur through the rain. My reflection stared back from the glass, stronger, certain, alive. They were wrong. I rested my hand on the stack of documents beside me, the pieces of my story reclaimed. Now I rebuild what they destroyed. And they can only watch. I woke up without the weight. No pounding in my chest, no dread clawing behind my ribs. Just morning light, real, soft, stretching across my ceiling like an old friend. I got up slowly, took my time, made coffee without glancing over my shoulder. That mattered more than I thought it would. I stepped out onto the porch, the wood cool under my feet. It smelled like the earth had just remembered how to breathe again. Next to me sat a small wooden box. I'd seen it 100 times in my mother's room, tucked beneath layers of scarves she never wore. Inside was a letter she'd written but never mailed. Her words weren't poetic, just sharp, plain, true. "You were always stronger than us. Not stronger than her. Stronger than all of them." I read it twice, then set it down. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, watching steam curl from my mug, letting the silence mean something different now. Not loneliness. Peace. Later that morning, I drove out to the cemetery. It wasn't a pilgrimage. It was a step. I parked under a crooked oak tree and carried the music box in both hands, like it still meant something, even if I didn't know what. Her grave was easy to find. No angels, no marble. Just her name, the dates, and too much space between them. I placed the music box at the base of the headstone. Let the wind catch the petals of the plastic roses someone had left. You deserved better, I said aloud. But so did I. And I'm done apologizing for wanting more. Across the hill, a family was burying someone. Quiet grief. I felt it, but it didn't sink into me this time. It passed through like wind. I walked away slowly, not because I was dragging anything behind me, but because for once, I wasn't running from anything. I left with my back straight, my shoes muddy, and nothing tangled around my ankles. Back at the house, I opened the closets like I was opening the past. Not all of it needed to be kept. Most of it didn't. My father's suits, gone. I folded them into donation bags without hesitation. I kept one copy of the original contract, the one they all fought over, and a single photo. The three of us, me, Lucian, and her, before everything fractured. Before truth began clawing its way out. I found his letter in the bottom drawer. You were right. That's all he wrote. No apology. No explanation. I didn't want either. I took it to the fireplace, held it to the flame, and watched it shrink into itself. The ashes rose like dust, unremarkable. The garage used to hum with secrets. Now it just echoed. I stood there, taking in the emptiness. Then, without planning to, I sat at the piano. The keys were dusty, some stuck. But when I pressed down, they answered. I played, halting at first. Then more sure. It didn't matter if it sounded good. It mattered that it was mine again. Weeks later, I handed over the house keys and moved into a modest third-floor apartment on the edge of the city. No family name carved into the mailbox. No legacy. Just space and a lease with my signature at the bottom. I hung it on the wall beside the front door. My job at the legal aid nonprofit started slow. I kept my head down, learned names, read files. My first client was a woman whose husband had taken everything: credit, home, dignity. She didn't want pity. Just help. I gave her both, quietly. After our meeting, my boss pulled me aside. You've got fire, she said. Just make sure it warms people, not burns them. I nodded. Noted it. Let it settle inside me. That evening, as I unpacked the last box, there was a knock at the door. A young woman stood there, nervous, gripping her phone like a lifeline. You're the woman from the trial, right? I hesitated for a second. Then nodded. Yeah. You want some coffee? She smiled, small but real. I opened the door wider. We talked for over an hour. She asked hard questions. I answered the ones I could. The rest, I promised she'd figure out. Later that night, I climbed up to the rooftop. The city buzzed around me, not demanding anything. Just existing. I looked out, felt the breeze, and let my thoughts settle. They buried me in a lie, I whispered. I climbed out with truth. I thought of my old cases, the courtroom, the file folders full of twisted stories. They were all just chapters. What came after that was the story. On my wall, above the desk, hung the lease. My name. Mine alone. I said it out loud. No hesitation. Not the name they gave me. The one I took back. That's when I noticed the envelope. Unmarked. No stamp. Just sitting on the floor, like it had slipped in when I wasn't looking. I opened it. One line typed on yellowed paper, "There's more you haven't seen." And a key. Small. Rusted. Cold. My stomach tightened, but I didn't panic. I just placed the key in the drawer beside my mother's letter. I didn't throw it away. Because some things end with a verdict. But some stories, some truths, they wait. And I wasn't done yet.